Hello everyone, welcome back to Unveiling Mythical Legends. Today we are going to dive into the world of Daedalus, ancient Greece's most legendary architect, sculptor, and engineer. He was a genius artist, but his vanity and jealousy led him to a tragic fate. From innovations in sculpting to the tragic flight of father and son, Daedalus' life was filled with conflict, creation, and destruction. Today, we will explore how this ancient Greek master changed the course of art history and how he confronted the darkness within. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the exciting stories. Daedalus, the architect, sculptor, and engineer from Athens, is undoubtedly one of the most influential figures in ancient Greek history. He was not only a highly skilled architect, but also one of the pioneers of sculptural art. His innovations and talents not only transformed the landscape of ancient Greek art, but also had a profound impact on the development of Western art history as a whole. Daedalus ushered sculpture into a new era, breaking away from traditional limitations and turning sculpture from lifeless stone blocks into dynamic, living works of art. Before Daedalus, most sculptures in ancient Greece were symbolic in nature, with figures typically lacking intricate details and dynamic motion. The human body was often portrayed in a flat, two-dimensional way, with little focus on lifelike expression. However, Daedalus introduced entirely new sculpting techniques and concepts. He began to emphasize the dynamic beauty of the human body, meticulously carving the stretch of limbs, the lines of muscles, and the overall posture of his figures, making them appear as though they were alive. This innovation brought a sense of power and vitality to his works, far surpassing any sculptures of his time. One of Daedalus' most famous contributions was the groundbreaking change he brought to Greek sculpture. Using more refined techniques, he transformed statues from simple realism into dynamic representations of the human form, capturing a wide range of movements and postures. He added intricate details of muscle structure and a sense of naturalism to the poses, which were vividly expressed in his works. The statues he sculpted broke free from the traditional stiff stances and became more lifelike and fluid, as if they might come to life at any moment. This innovation opened up new artistic horizons for later artists, influencing the direction of sculpture for generations to come. Despite Daedalus' unquestionable achievements in the realm of art, he had one fatal flaw: vanity. He placed immense importance on his reputation and could not tolerate anything or anyone that threatened his position, especially when the threat came from those closest to him. This made the situation even more complicated, as his own pride and insecurities clouded his judgment and actions. Daedalus' vanity became a driving force behind many of the tragic events in his life, leading him to make choices that would ultimately seal his tragic fate. Daedalus' nephew, Talos, as a student, displayed extraordinary talent and creativity. Talos' inventions, especially the saw and the compass, led to groundbreaking advancements in the fields of mechanics and architecture. These innovations not only showcased Talos' brilliance, but also made Daedalus feel threatened in these areas. Daedalus had always been the leader in these technologies, and now, Talos' inventions had the potential to surpass, even outshine, his own achievements. This filled Daedalus' heart with jealousy and unease. This jealousy quickly turned into hatred for Talos, and the shadow in Daedalus' heart grew deeper, making it impossible for him to remain calm. He began to view Talos as a threat, an opponent that had to be eliminated. Eventually, Daedalus decided to take extreme action to resolve this problem. No longer the artist who achieved success through creation and effort, he transformed into a ruthless figure, driven by the need to protect his reputation and eliminate any competition at all costs. In a dark moment, Daedalus devised a deadly scheme. He threw Talos from the castle of Pallas Athena, an action that directly led to Talos' death. This tragedy not only destroyed the young life of Talos, but also placed a heavy burden on Daedalus' reputation and soul. While his technical achievements were remarkable, This crime left Daedalus forever trapped in the darkness of his own heart and the shadow of his selfishness. Daedalus' fate seemed doomed by a moment of impulsive action, but destiny appeared unwilling to let this genius artist fade away so easily. Despite being arrested for the tragic murder of his nephew and sentenced to death, this was not the end of his story. Daedalus showcased his intelligence and will to survive, managing to escape and find refuge on the island of Crete. This new sanctuary offered him a chance to start over. On Crete, Daedalus was received by King Minos, who appointed him as the royal chief architect. This position allowed him to continue applying his extraordinary talents and skills. Under King Minos' orders, Daedalus began designing and constructing an unprecedented labyrinth. This maze was built to imprison the mythical Minotaur, a half-man, half-bull creature. Its structure was extraordinarily intricate, resembling an endless maze where anyone who entered would struggle to find a way out. It is said that even Daedalus himself once got lost within it, which proves the ingenious and complex design of the labyrinth. It was not only an architectural achievement, but also a true manifestation of Daedalus' brilliant mind. However, as time passed, Daedalus began to feel trapped on the island, both physically and mentally. His mood grew heavy, and he started to question the so-called friendship with King Minos. Though Minos saw him as a friend, this friendship felt more like an invisible imprisonment, and Daedalus sensed that his freedom was being slowly stripped away. Minos' reliance on him made it impossible for him to act freely, and this constraint caused Daedalus to feel deeply dissatisfied and suffocated. Finally, Daedalus decided to take action. He was no longer willing to remain a prisoner on Crete. In order to achieve freedom, he designed a pair of flying wings, planning to escape the island with his young son Icarus. The design of these wings was exquisitely ingenious, made from feathers and wax, showcasing not only his creativity, but also his boundless mechanical genius. He trained Icarus on how to use the wings and warned him not to fly too high or too low, to avoid coming too close to the sun or the sea. At this moment, Daedalus' heart was filled with both hope and an underlying fear, knowing that this escape could very well determine their lives or deaths. To escape the confines of Crete, Daedalus not only designed a pair of wings for himself, but also meticulously crafted a pair for his young son, Icarus. Together, father and son were ready to fly toward freedom. Daedalus was filled with both hope and anxiety. This escape was not just a challenge to their lives, but also a promise for their future. The father carefully explained the principles of flight to Icarus and gave him a crucial warning. Do not fly too high, and do not fly too low. Flying too high will bring you closer to the sun, and the heat will melt the wax on the wings, while flying too low will bring you close to the sea, and the moisture will weigh the wings down, causing you to lose control. These words were of utmost importance to Daedalus. He knew that no matter how well designed the wings were, without careful control, they could lead to fatal consequences. However, Icarus, the young and curious child, was overwhelmed with excitement at the freedom of flight. He did not fully understand his father's warning, and as the flight went on, he gradually forgot about the caution. His heart soared with every higher ascent, and the scenery around him became more beautiful and vast. Little by little, he flew higher and higher, as if trying to reach that scorching sun, coming closer to the mysterious light. Daedalus, anxiously calling from below, hoped his son would heed the warning, but Icarus' gaze was already captivated by the allure of the heights. Soon disaster struck. As Icarus flew higher, the sun's heat began to melt the wax on his wings, causing the once sturdy structure to become weak and fragile. Suddenly, Icarus lost his balance, and his wings could no longer support him. They began to twist violently. Desperately, he tried to steady himself, but there was no way to reverse the course of fate. Ultimately, Icarus fell from the sky, plunging into the sea below. The deep, bottomless ocean swallowed his life, and his body was washed ashore, becoming an eternal memory. The tragedy of Icarus was, without a doubt, a devastating blow to Daedalus' soul. The father and son, who once flew toward freedom with hope and dreams, were ultimately brought to irreparable pain by the impulsive actions of young Icarus. As Daedalus looked at the wings he had carefully designed, witnessing his son fall from the sky, the pain in his heart was indescribable. No wisdom or achievement could ever mend the profound sorrow of losing a beloved child. When Icarus' body was washed ashore, Daedalus knew that no matter how hard he tried, he could never bring his son back. He knew deeply that this pain would be his eternal mark. He did not choose to bury Icarus anywhere, but instead named an island after him, Icaria Island. This lonely island would carry the story of him and Icarus, becoming an immortal memorial. Daedalus personally prepared a quiet grave for Icarus, burying his son on this desolate land. This island symbolized an indelible memory, and it also bore Daedalus' endless remorse and pain. Although Icarus' life had ended, Daedalus' suffering was only beginning. With an unshakable sorrow, he left the coast filled with memories and escaped to Sicily. For him, this island was both a new beginning and an escape from past pain. In Sicily, Daedalus found a new life. Though he could not recover from the tragedy, he continued to create, transforming his suffering into art, attempting to find a trace of inner peace on this new land. His days in Sicily were both the start of a new life and a tangled web of memories and pain. After escaping the shadows of the past, Daedalus was received by King Cocalus and began to work on significant public projects for the island. King Cocalus, fully aware of Daedalus' talent, viewed him as a priceless asset and appointed him as the chief architect. During this period, Daedalus' artistic talents once again reached their peak. His sculptures and architectural works achieved unprecedented levels of both aesthetics and practicality. Each piece was not only visually striking but also filled with ingenious design and exquisite details, showcasing his exceptional craftsmanship and wisdom. Whether in sculpture or architecture, Daedalus' works seamlessly blended art and functionality, leaving people in awe of his technical prowess and thoughtful designs. However, even though his life in Sicily had gained some stability, Daedalus could never escape the shadows of the past. King Minos, the ruler who had once placed great trust in him, learned of Daedalus' refuge in Sicily and was filled with rage. He could not tolerate the betrayal of his former close ally, so he commanded his army to march and demanded that the king of Sicily hand over the so-called traitor. King Minos' anger did not subside with time, but rather grew stronger as Daedalus' fame as a creator spread even more. Although King Cocalus initially agreed to Minos' request to hand over Daedalus, he had already devised a cunning plan in his mind. The scheming king did not intend to let Minos off easily. Instead, he decided to retaliate against his former adversary with a meticulously planned trap. To achieve his goal, Cocalus set a bait, inviting Minos to his palace on Sicily for a grand feast. Minos, trusting completely in Cocalus' hospitality, unknowingly walked right into a deadly snare. When Minos arrived at the palace, Cocalus arranged for him to relax in a warm bath, seemingly as a gesture of friendship. However, this warm bath would soon become Minos' tomb. While Minos was bathing, Cocalus ordered the bath's water to be sealed, trapping Minos inside. Minos struggled helplessly in the warm water, unable to escape, and ultimately drowned. This act of betrayal and treachery ensured that Minos would never return to Crete. The news of Minos' death reached Crete, and a grand funeral was held in Agri. To honor the king, the Cretans built a magnificent temple dedicated to the goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodite. This temple served not only as a memorial to King Minos, but also as a symbol of his tragic life. Daedalus, the great Greek architect, sculptor, and engineer, ultimately chose to spend the rest of his life on Sicily. Despite enduring the heartbreaking loss of his son, and having to face multiple escapes and betrayals. He never gave up on his love and pursuit of art. On the island of Sicily, he found a new place to settle and fresh inspiration for his work. This great artist continued to create, leaving behind countless breathtaking sculptures and architectural masterpieces. Each piece contained his exceptional talent and his endless pursuit of beauty. His artistic achievements not only made breakthroughs in architecture, but also displayed astonishing ingenuity in sculpture and mechanical design. Daedalus sculptures were not only full of life, but every detail was meticulously carved. His mechanical designs were not only functional, but also brimming with innovation and intelligence. Daedalus was not just a master of sculpture and architecture, but also a pioneer in the integration of mechanics and art. His work became a model for future generations, and his name will forever shine brightly in history. The story of Daedalus is one filled with genius and vanity, tragedy and regret. It carries the contradictions of human emotion and the whims of fate. He was one of the greatest architects, sculptors, and engineers of ancient Greece. His creations not only laid the foundation for ancient Greek art, but also exemplified humanity's pursuit of beauty and the challenge to its limits. Daedalus sculpture ushered in a new era, where his works were no longer merely flat representations, but full of dynamic life and realism. His sculptures made every detail come to life, making the viewer feel as if they could hear the breath and heartbeat of the statue. However, despite Daedalus' unparalleled talent, his vanity led him down a tragic path. When he saw his nephew Talos displaying extraordinary talent, his jealousy led him to make a terrible decision, ultimately resulting in Talos' death. This event became the shadow of his life, bringing him an indelible sense of guilt and forcing him to pay a heavy price. Behind his art and creations lay a heart desperate for recognition, and it was this heart that plunged him into deep pain due to the conflicts between himself and others. The story of Daedalus is not just a legend of art and creation. It also makes us reflect on the whims of fate and the contradictions within human nature. From his unparalleled sculpting skills to the tragic flight with his son Icarus, his name will live on forever, becoming a brilliant chapter in the history of art. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like, share with your friends, and leave a comment below telling us your thoughts on the story of Daedalus and Icarus. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to our channel so we can explore more fascinating histories and legends together. See you in the next episode.